It's time for a change. The Pokemon series has travelled a long road since the original Game Boy titles in 1996. Every major handheld has sported sequels and remakes through the years, each one taking gradual steps towards realising its worlds and creatures in greater detail. From the 2D monochrome visuals in red, green, blue and yellow, to the full 3D environments in the more recent Ultra Sun and Moon on 3DS, every game makes a technical advance. But Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, the latest two games on Switch, throw a curveball to that sense of progression. Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee are, in a nutshell, full 3D remakes of the original Game Boy titles from 20 years ago. In particular, it recreates the yellow version, which put you in the company of a Pikachu sidekick. Every beat of its story and every environment in the Kanto region is recreated using developer Game Freak's latest engine. The Pokédex is also limited to the original 151, a mirror match for the original games. The catch? Well, it's a divisive release, if only because it dares to simplify so many other elements. There's no PC database to swap your Pokemon, for example. You can make any change you want at any time in the field. Random encounters are also removed. Instead, wild critters are now fully visible in the grass, and bumping into them will trigger a battle. Most controversial of all is the way such encounters are handled. Duels with trainers play out as they always did, a race to deplete your opponent's HP to 0. 2 vs 2 battles are back too, and the mechanics work as they always did. That's the trainers and gym bosses, but bumping into a Pokemon only gives you the option to catch them rather than fight. It borrows the Pokemon Go throwing mechanic, using Switch's gyro controls to aim and time a throw at a circle. The augmented reality aspect of the mobile game is gone of course, but the influence is clear. No real combat takes place, and you weaken in a sense the opponent just by feeding it berries. It's a bold change. Interestingly, Let's Go only demands one Joy-Con to play. After all, it's simple enough to only need an analog stick and a couple of buttons. The Pro Controller isn't supported at all, which is a confusing omission. Much like the rest of Let's Go's design though, and for better or worse, all of this is in aid of removing friction between you and the game. Much like its mechanics, the interface is stripped down to only the essentials. All of these changes streamline the experience, removing frustrations for a beginner. Sadly, the hardcore enthusiasts will feel shortchanged, especially going back to the complexity of Ultra Sun and Moon last year. All told though, if you're itching for a nostalgia trip and haven't kept up to speed with the advancements of more recent entries, this is a great way to jump back in. It even integrates Pokemon Go support as an option to let you import any caught Pokemon on your mobile to the Switch version. That said, you can't transfer them back the other way. So what's changed from a graphical standpoint? Well, the Game Boy game is a fun comparison point, just because every locale is richly remodeled in 3D using the same template as Yellow. Between Ash's hometown, the forests, and Viridian City, each environment is updated using rendering tech closer to console Pokemon titles, like the Colosseum games or perhaps Pokken Tournament. Gone are the still sprites, and we now have fully animated 3D renders, the same as used in Go on mobile. Lighting and shader work are a factor too. There's a specular property to every material used across the world. Technically, no doubt we're being spoiled here. That 20-year difference shows a huge chasm in options available to developers to realise the artwork and level design. And yet, there's still an element of subjectivity to which is more appealing. To my mind, the original's top-down sprite work has a lot of character, even to this day, as does its chiptune audio design. It's vintage 90s role-playing, one of the purest examples of its era, running on the most iconic handheld console of the time. Undeniably, it takes more GPU horsepower to run Let's Go Pikachu on Switch's Tegra X1 chip. Even so, it's a shame the anime-inspired roots of the original are abandoned for a more clinical CG look. Every blade of grass, the wood texturing to houses, and the material work on each Pokemon take on a synthetic plastic quality. We have more dynamic camera angles in cutscenes, yes, but world detail struggles to hold up to any level of scrutiny up close. Shadows fall very short of expectation. Let's Go Pikachu uses low-resolution blobs of shade that flicker on movement, an area that sticks out like a sore thumb given Switch's proficiency in other games like Zelda Breath of the Wild. This could be a lot better. All told, it straddles a line between the old designs and a more realistic take. The result is a middle ground that's serviceable, clear, bright, but lacking the charm or personality of the series entries before it, while avoiding anything too cutting edge. Certainly comparing the game to the 3DS version like Ultra Sun, where cell shading is used on the creature designs, it's a big step up technically. Resolution is a big factor here. While 3DS runs its games at 400 by 240 on its top screen, Switch bumps it all the way up to 1920 by 1080 docked under a TV. Or if you're playing it as a handheld, that's 1280 by 720, still over a 9 times increase over 3DS. Figures aside, the art direction is something to consider though. Is this clinical Pokemon Go style what we want from Game Freak's next Pokemon entry on Switch? Or would we prefer a return to the more colourful anime inflections of earlier games? In terms of presentation, the 3DS entries are ahead in some respects too. Cutscenes are crisp and sharp on Switch, and you get great close-ups of Pikachu at the start. Even so, 3DS games going back to X and Y did far more with its 3D camera during gameplay. It let you explore big cities with dynamic angles, letting you catch shops and NPCs side on. It brought every area to life in a way that Let's Go Pikachu doesn't, with its more rigid traditional top-down view. We do at least get the fluid 360-degree analog movement on characters, but the presentation of the world sticks to the old Game Boy formula. It's a choice that makes this feel more like a technical sideways step than a full-on improvement. Despite this, there's still a lot to love in the Switch release. The good news, whether Switch is docked or on the go, you're getting the exact same visual experience. Now the low quality shadowing stays in place either way. It's a shame the higher GPU clocks while docked couldn't increase the quality here, but the core visuals are otherwise identical. Besides switching from 1080p while docked to a native 720p while portable, you get the same visuals either way. As is tradition for Pokemon, there's a sense Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee are built as handheld experiences first. On the big screen, a lot of shortcomings stand out, the lack of anti-aliasing especially. Viewed with Switch's smaller screen though, the presentation is fine, but really I'd hope they could do more than a simple res bump for docked play. Again, this feels like an experiment for developer Game Freak, a dipping of the toe into new technological waters on Switch, where the use of the hardware could be expanded upon in a follow-up. Controls also bear mention here. Armed with a single Joy-Con, you can play through the entire game easily using a timed swing forward to throw a Pokeball. The accuracy is a little off at times, and there is a slight delay between the throw and the on-screen animation kicking in, something you have to factor into the timing. There's a satisfying use of the Joy-Con's so-called HD rumble here too, giving tactile feedback as soon as you lock down a new Pokemon. There's an alternative way to play though. If you're running Switch in handheld mode, with the Joy-Cons locked on either side, the gyrometer is used to move your entire viewpoint. Pressing the A button unleashes a Pokeball at the target, with a lower latency reaction as a result. I preferred the handheld approach myself, but it will be a matter of choice. There's one caveat here in performance, though more of a side note. You get some rare performance drops while playing Switch as a portable, but not on docked. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee runs with a 30 FPS ceiling, just like the series entries before it. Now this is double buffer V-synced, and so approaching the end of Viridian Forest chops the frame rate down to 20 FPS. No need for frame rate analysis tools to feel this. The game logic is tied to the frame rate, which means the whole rate of play is slowed down to 66% speed. It sticks out, but as I say, this is the only rough point I've spotted after 5 hours of play. The rest of the game is a locked 30, and there's little issue docked or portable. Switch performance could arguably have been pushed to 60 FPS docked, and that might have helped with the Pokemon Go style capturing. Even so, 30 is a reasonable number that doesn't stray too far from expectation. It's also a big upgrade over the 3DS entries, which ran between 20 to 30 FPS. Notably Lumio City in X and Y, where the main square could really challenge 3DS hardware. This area was a superb technical achievement at the time. Game Freak pushed the 3DS to give players a huge level of freedom, even if it did come with dips. And the team went further still, with more detailed character models in Sun and Moon. Far be it for us to want more frame rate drops on Switch, but at least here you can see 3DS's visuals evolving with each step, and hopefully that can translate to the next Switch entry too. All of this hangs a question mark over the series' future. Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee feel like experiments before a fuller package comes along, reported to land in 2019. Personally, I had a great time with it. I finished Pokemon Blue on the Game Boy all those years back, and only dipped into the series again for Diamond on DS, where the systems had stacked up to create a deeper, albeit more formidable package. This by comparison feels like a breeze to play, and some of the stripping back in mechanics makes sense. Let's Go may pander to the popularity of Go on mobile, but it succeeds on the level of giving newer players a way back into the series. As for the use of Switch hardware, there's a lot more Game Freak can do. In terms of its design, being based on Pokemon Yellow hamstrings the scope of the project somewhat. Visually speaking, its tech doesn't shine as much as it perhaps could have, had the environments been built from scratch. Even older 3DS iterations go further, with their more dynamic areas and camera angles, and not to mention the sheer breadth of the Pokédex. The Let's Go titles work as superb starting acts for Switch, but for die-hard series fans, it's perhaps better seen as more of a sample of what to expect in the next release. That's all from me today though. If you did enjoy this look at Pokemon Let's Go, let us know with a like or subscribe. And to get all future videos as soon as they land, don't forget to hit the bell. All of our videos are available on our Patreon at digitalfoundry.net, and to get in touch directly, just use Twitter. But until next time, thanks for watching.